All right, here we go. We're here for another one. Your man Maurice, aka the People's Source. I know what I call myself. Frankie.
What's good, everybody? Frankie Fabre, back at it again. I'm excited. Season 2. Also, shout out to Kenneth King. Couldn't be here this season.
I did not do that on the previous episode, and I should have. Kenneth King was not able to be with us for this particular season. He has some things that he's taking care of. Got to have our priorities in order, and he definitely has his in order. So we miss him. We want to make sure we shout him out and let everyone know that he will be back with us when we get going again for the next season, because we're not going anywhere. Better believe that.
Thanks.
I want to get right into this one. I got a very special guest with me today. Definitely a good person. I like to think of him as an individual who has a very strong opinion and very strong input, positive opinion about what this job entails as well. So I would love for him to introduce himself now to the world. By all means, do your thing.
I appreciate the introduction. My name is Brandon Love, and like the people source, what you call him, I know him as Dre, and his colleague over there. Is definitely an opportunity for me to come on out here and just share my truth, and I'm just super excited to be here. My first podcast, so I'm looking forward to just continue to learn and see and let's have a conversation.
Facts. Well, I'm always humble, and I always say thank you to the individuals who take this time to sit on my panel, because bottom line is everyone doesn't have to do this. And if you come on this panel, that means you are obviously one, you feel like you represent something bigger than what we just do on our regular 9 to 5. Right. You obviously recognize that there's some things that need to be addressed, and we do that here. Right. So with that being said, let's get right into it. So, Sergeant with the Houston Police Department. Nice. Prior to you being a sergeant, how long were you a cop?
I've been employed in law enforcement. I'm approaching my 10th year now.
10th year. So that's and also including you being a sergeant.
Including me being a sergeant, correct. Okay.
Prior to being a sergeant, how many years did you were you a cop?
9 years. 9.5 years.
9 years. So fairly new with the rank of sergeant.
Correct.
Okay. How's that transition been?
It's been a good transition. Been real smooth.
Telling people what to do now.
It's just definitely a level of responsibility that you have to make sure that you are fully cognizant of, because now you have officers underneath you that are looking for your advice. Your knowledge on something, your recommendations or suggestions on something. So it's definitely not something that you take lightly.
Right. So obviously I'm a rank beneath you, obviously being a cop, you being a sergeant. But there's one thing that we do have in common. We're both black men on this job.
Absolutely.
And we both obviously have an opinion of being black men on this job. And I know I've seen and heard things obviously that I've addressed already. I'm sure you've heard and seen things that you felt or feel still needs to be addressed. So what we'll do is we'll share moments today and figure out what we can address today amongst one another. And one of the things that I do want to ask you is, as a black man on this job, how do you navigate, the climate previously and what has happened pertaining to law enforcement, and then just the climate that we live in today? And particularly in the black community, how do you navigate being a black man on this job and wearing that uniform?
Before I continue, I want to prerequisite something that, like I mentioned earlier, my name is Brandon Love, and I'm here representing not for the department that I work for, but just for law enforcement in general.
Absolutely.
And also as a black man, like you mentioned, and also being the president of a black labor union.
Absolutely.
So I'm representing those three different platforms: the black man, law enforcement in general, and just as a president of a black labor union.
Absolutely.
So to ask your question once more, I don't want to get the.
So in a nutshell, being a black man, how do you navigate being a black man on this job and trying to, I guess, represent what you believe is necessary as being a cop and also being a black man, given the climate that we live in today and previous, things that have happened, particularly in the black community? How do you navigate being a black man and being a cop?
Yeah, it's a double-edged sword, for a lot of us, as black men, especially being black and in law enforcement. For myself, I always want to remind myself that I'm a black man first, and I never forget that. Because at the end of the day, I can take off my uniform, but I can't take my skin off.
Period.
And I'm fully aware of that, and I always remind myself of that. And especially in today's climate, as being this term black in America and black in law enforcement, we already looked at as from the outside in as, when we interact with citizens, from my experiences, right? When we interact with citizens, they first see me as black, as a black man, then they see my profession. Versus some of my counterparts, they may see them as a cop first, then their race in some ways, especially in our culture, So that's a lot to grapple with from time to time, but it just reminds me that I serve a bigger purpose. I know I can't change the world. I'm not expecting to change the world, but I want to definitely make an immediate impact on my immediate world. And to me, that's true success. That's true power. So I just try to, remind myself and remind my kids of that we're all not painted with that broad brush that they like to paint us with, and we all have our own individual opinions and perspectives about certain things.
Okay. No, I completely understand what you're saying. I think for me, I pay attention to a lot of my counterparts, the things that they say and the things that they do. And I'm sure vice versa. I'm sure people pay close attention to me, the things that I say and the things that I do, especially with having this type of platform.
Yeah.
So with you obviously stating that you would like to make an impact and you cannot change everyone,
right,
but what are some things that you feel needs to change as it pertains to law enforcement?
Absolutely.
What are some things that you think needs to change?
Some things that I've experienced throughout my 10 years on working in law enforcement, I think one of the critical things that needs to change is the level of transparency. Because I've seen from time and time again that, when you have an officer in upper management, they make it seem like, I think we spoke about that, like they're robotic.
Very
robotic, right? And you're not robots. None of us are robots.
No, sir.
None of us go at home at the end of the night and plug into the wall and wait for the next.
You can't recharge me.
Right. So I think that, if there's no secret in this policing thing. If we have information that needs to be shared amongst us, share that information. Why does it have to make it seem like it has to be all secretive and we have to keep it close to the chest when that information can be poured out to, your guys to help try to effectuate change? So I think that, the level of transparency and open lines of communication needs to improve dramatically in order for us to really tackle the issues internally and externally.
Absolutely.
What issues? Let's start with internally. Can you highlight what some issues are that you've realized for yourself?
Absolutely. I mean, I think the biggest issue is lack of trust. Lack of trust within, this policing realm of us. There are, unfortunately, there have been officers, across the country who have got a raw deal when it came to discipline, when it came to promotions, when it came to getting into specialized divisions, when it came to, just doing the job, meeting certain quotas for other smaller agencies, and if it's not favorable to the person who's requesting this or demanding that, then that outcome can be detrimental to those officers. And that brings a level of distrust internally because they're not being backed by, those, the individuals that can support them.
Right. So you would say there's a big layer of distrust within police departments pertaining across the board.
Across the board, yeah.
And so do you feel that distrust within your own unit is also being leaked out into the streets dealing with everyday civilians?
I mean, civilians aren't stupid. I mean, they know what's going on. They know that, there can be some level of dysfunction inside police departments across the board. So, for us to think or be naive to think that, civilians, just because they don't wear a badge and a gun, that they're just oblivious to what we have going on.
Right.
That's very, a very small thinking.
Right.
Oblivious in what way? That there's not issues within the police department itself?
Yes.
Well, here's the thing, because we were having a conversation yesterday, and that particular conversation, I did ask this question, but I feel like you're going to enlighten me in a different way, and that's why I'm asking you as well. Is developing a sense of trust within the police department in itself. Like, that's, if people are severed within a job, a particular job that's supposed to uphold a certain standard, then what that does is that puts those who they are serving in jeopardy. Because if you're dealing with things behind closed doors that aren't yet dealt with because of ego and pride and stuff that you're dealing with internally, what makes you think that what a leader does in moderation that the followers won't do in excess? And so what's happening, and what I feel, and this is just a thought, and that's why I'm asking you, and it's not that I would say civilians are oblivious to the fact that there might be issues, but at the end of the day, this ain't our job. Mm-hmm. Our job isn't to wear the badge or the gun to uphold or to enforce the law. So why is it our problem that you don't got your shit together at the police department, and then now you're bringing that out here, whether you're dealing with stuff at home or you're dealing with stuff within the unit yourself of people's egos and issues, and however you guys handle those certain situations? Do you feel that there are some things within the police department itself that need to be handled that you think, if was addressed internally, whether it has to do with a psychological perspective, an emotional, mental perspective, handled within the police department, then that will also create a better engagement with the community and with us who are not police officers?
I mean, absolutely. I think you just answered your own question. Yeah, there are definitely, problems and issues with inside police departments across the nation that we need to, get our shit together, for lack of better words, right? So, and you're right. You didn't sign the civilians that trust us and for us to go out here and do our job without prejudice, without bias and things of that nature. Of course, they trust us to do just that, and a lot of us do just that. And they're but at the same time, I think sometimes people forget that we're not perfect, but and we make mistakes, but we also have to acknowledge those mistakes and address those mistakes.
What kind of mistakes are we talking about?
Are we talking internally, or are we speaking about pertaining to how we're dealing with the community? Because, be honest, it all starts from internal first.
Absolutely.
So a lot of things that we do internally in love, for me, tell me if you agree or disagree with this, but I believe, again, the fear tactics that we play on one another pertaining to, like we just spoke about, higher ups, pertaining to dealing with the people who are considered of lower rank, the fear tactics that gets brought to the table. And what I mean by that is, from day one of the academy, if you think from day one to the present moment of you graduating, it all starts within that 6 months. The level of fear that they bring to your attention to try to now control you, fear and control. Because bottom line is, if you don't fear me, then how can I control you? So I think internally we try to play the fear tactic on one another 10 times more than how it gets portrayed out to the community dealing with the police. I think we deal with each other worse, actually, because of the fear tactics that we play on one another. I asked you a question one time. I says, love, is there a general order pertaining to doing traffic stops? I said, no. And I left it at that. I just wanted to know that question. The reason why I wanted to know it so much is because how traffic stops get brought to the attention so much. You would believe that there's a general order that specifically addresses traffic stops. So again, and then the way it gets presented is what will happen if it's not done. And that's the fear tactic aspect of it. And we play on each other's psyche. And then when we go out there, now we're so concerned about what just took place with us internally that now we're not concerned about how our interaction with the person is going to happen, or what's going to take place with us and a particular person in the general public externally. We're not concerned about that now, because we're concerned about the conversation that we were just having internally. And now that bleeds out into the street on how we deal with the public. Would you agree or disagree with that?
Yeah, I would agree with that. There's a lot of, like you said, internal issues and fear tactics that amongst us that that we try to deal with accordingly. I remember in your first series, first season, and you mentioned something, but when you were NYPD, that summons, right?
Oh,
And having these different summons, and and meeting a certain deal, because if you don't, then of course I'm short living what you're saying, but living what you're saying, but
you didn't do it. There was you had problems,
right? And that's a fear tactic within itself, unfortunately. And I think that I don't know where it came from. I don't know it came from 100 years ago when policing was formed, but unfortunately,
we know why policing was formed, right?
I think we know, but I mean,
slave patrol, yeah, and all that, yeah.
Right,
yeah.
Okay, so
I mean,
we know.
I mean, that could be a whole conversation in itself.
Absolutely.
Slave patrol is why policing was even instituted to begin with, because most places police themselves or had a person being able to handle that and do that.
So is that something that? And I'm not. And again, let me go ahead and do this right now. I'm speaking to my experiences, not things that I'm speaking for the department, saying that this is what's happening with members of the department. I am speaking from my experiences and my experiences only. And when I pose a question to Love, it's asking if he's ever had those same experiences and does he agree with a statement that I make. Let me go ahead and make that clear. I am not saying that, my current department is pushing out things that I'm speaking about right now. Let me be clear about that. I'm solely speaking to my experiences and what I've encountered with working for two departments and having knowledge and gain knowledge of overall what's being practiced in policing today and how we can rectify that. So I just wanted to make sure I got that clear. So you mentioned the fair game. So for me, I look at it as, if you want me to fear what you can bring to the table, what happens when I don't fear that? You know what I'm saying? Like, what happens now when I don't?
Fear tactics don't work.
Now what?
What's protocol?
Now what?
Right. So if he said the fear tactics don't work, now what?
So again, I always try to use me as the example so that everyone doesn't think I'm just talking shit. I don't fear anything that the police department can do to me. I don't care, and I'm only speaking to the police department because that's what I do for a living. I don't go to work to be fearful.
Now break the word fearful. Now what do you mean by fear?
You have people who go to work who absolutely are fearful to even have a conversation with the supervisor if they disagreed with something, or just have questions. People are afraid to ask questions.
Have you dealt with that?
No, actually, that's what I'm just trying to understand his definition of fear.
Tell me why you think you haven't done with that.
Because I'm not afraid to pose a question, ask a question, or to anyone, because we're all, in my mind, we all sign up for this job to be, public servants. So regardless of your rank, of course, I'm going to always respect the chain of command.
I'm gonna respect you as a human being.
And,
for me,
I'm gonna respect you as a man first, or a woman first, of course. But I'm also going to respect chain of command in regards to, because that's just how the job structure, in my opinion, is.
Right.
So if you have an officer, unless he has a direct issue, with the captain, of course, address the captain, accordingly. I don't expect you to, circumvent the sergeant, the lieutenant, and speak to the captain if it's something frivolous. But if it's something major, it's nothing prohibiting you from having a conversation, knocking on the captain's door and having a conversation with him.
So
I encourage that.
So I'll stay on that line with you then. What happens when, like you just said, what happens now when that particular individual who holds a certain rank decides that they're going to get disrespectful? And let's go back into the fear. Based off how things get presented to us, there's you're a bit reluctant now to feel like you can have a response to that individual who outranks you. and it's based off how the culture is, how they present it to you. And if you do say something back, because see, saying something back doesn't mean you're combative.
Correct.
And I think that gets confused on this job. An individual speaks up, and now naturally they become the combative one. So staying on course with the comment that you made, what happens when that sergeant, lieutenant, or captain, or whatever rank it is, decides that they want to get a little bit beside themselves? What's expected now for the person who's the rank beneath them? How are they supposed to respond? Because now if they do respond a certain way, now what? Now what? How do you expect a human being to respond when you just obviously have absolutely no regard for how you just spoke to them or how you just dealt with them? Right. And I say it all the time, and you and I have spoke, off the record. I'm not going to be handled. Right. I'm an adult.
You're absolutely right.
I'm not going to be handled. I'm an adult and I'm a professional. And I carry myself in the most professional way within the hours of me having to be at work. So you're going to deal with me, one, as an adult first and as a professional. Anything outside of that, it's not happening. And it doesn't matter where you fall rank structure wise. That has everything to do about just being an adult, being a human being. If you have people skills problems, that's not my problem. Address me the way you want to be addressed. So part of that, and I think a lot of reasons why individuals who hold a certain rank feel they can address you a certain way is solely that reason. Well, I outrank you. Don't care. Would you talk to me this way if we weren't wearing this uniform? Probably not.
Probably not, yeah.
So whatever you do when you don't wear the uniform, you better do it when you wear it.
Right. So how do you feel about that?
Yeah, so there's some truth in that. Unfortunately, there's no, being in the world of policing, there's a wide range of personalities, backgrounds, upbringings. You have officers who have been homeschooled their entire lives and now wearing a badge and a gun. You have officers who have been, grew up in different circumstances from poverty and just had an opportunity to go right versus going left and now law enforcement. So you have a vast, right, demographic background of officers. So there's no, you don't have to, certain departments across the country, you don't have to have a college degree. You don't have to go to school, So that's the one of the issues within policing, in my opinion, across the country, especially, outside of Houston, outside of major cities like Chicago, New York, LA, those smaller cities, from my experiences, from what I've seen, it's a training problem. It's a cultural problem. And once we really address that issue in regards to training and culture and knowing how to understand different cultures, just because you're not from that particular culture and don't look like them or her, you have to understand there are differences amongst us.
For sure.
And like you mentioned before, like like you said, I agree. You're a man first, woman first, then we're a professional. And it's just really that simple.
Just have a level of respect.
Have a level of respect.
Period.
Respect goes both ways.
But
and unfortunately, that's not had always been the case.
There's a lot of ego on the job.
In our profession.
There's a lot of ego on this job.
Right.
And ego gets in the way. There's a lot of ego on the job. And I think at some point, we tend to forget what the overall objective and goal is. Everyone, and I said this to Frankie the other day, everyone is here and serves a different purpose. And everyone is not here for the same reasons.
Correct.
And I always speak about my purpose. I'm big on that now. I always say, if I can't find purpose in anything that I'm doing, then I'm probably not going to do it. I need to find purpose in everything that I do now. You being here on this job, having 10 years vetted in already, now being a supervisor on the job, what do you believe your purpose is now? What do you want to get accomplished? And do you believe your purpose was different from when you first got on the job to this current moment? What's your purpose?
I don't believe my purpose is different when I first started. When I joined this profession, first person in my family to go into this realm of work, right? And when I was in school, like I'm representing my show, I went to HBCU. So
what school did you go to?
Went to Dillard University,
okay,
in New Orleans. So I'm HBCU proud, like like I said, we are Black history.
Absolutely.
In my opinion, right? So when I was in college, man, and what I studied in college was political science. I've always been interested in the law enforcement side of politics, coming from the city that I grew up in. The city that I grew up in was riddled with crime and violence and poverty and things of that nature, right? So I knew then that that was something that I wanted to impact, my culture in that way. Fast forward to moving to where I am now, and when I joined the police academy shortly after, that was always my focus, because to me, true wealth, true success is through lineage. Not necessarily having a whole bunch of money, not necessarily having a whole bunch of power, but in the year 3000, when I'm no longer here, and they say the love last name, it has some substance behind it. It has some meaning behind it, right? And when my kids and their kids, I want to make an impact on them and impact on my immediate world. Like I mentioned earlier, I can't save the world. I know I can't save the world, but I want to impact my immediate world and make a difference that way. And now, as a supervisor, I now have an even bigger platform to really try to effectuate the change, within my immediate world. And also being the president of the labor union, I have another platform to impact my immediate world and effectuate some change. So that's the purpose and the path that I'm on, is trying to help as many people as I can. Because when it's all said and done, in my opinion, when I go upstairs and meet the Most High, He's going to ask me one question. And one question is, while you were on earth, who did you help? Who did you help? And I want to make sure I have a profound answer for Him. And it's that simple.
He's watching you now, so he knows what you're doing.
He's watching me now. So when that time comes, because life is fleeting, I can leave out of here, trip over the curb, hit my head, boom, it's over with, just like that.
Done.
So I want to maximize my dash every opportunity I get. We all got a beginning date, we all got an end date. We got that dash in between. And I want to maximize my dash every opportunity, because I don't know where that is.
Man, I love everything you just said, because that's my thing, just purpose. I want to maximize every single thing. There's no limitation on me. There's absolutely nothing that I feel like I can't achieve if I absolutely, really, really dedicate myself and give the time and attention that it needs. And part of my purpose with this job is making sure that, like you continue to use the word transparency. We need to be more transparent with the general public. Yeah. You know what I mean? They want to, you know how many people have so many questions that are unanswered pertaining to law enforcement? And I feel like this platform, this panel does that. This is, and I always make sure I'm redundant with this. This is not a beat up on cop time. Absolutely not.
Right.
You know what I mean? I wear the uniform.
Right.
This is not beat up on cop time. This is be transparent, make it aware that we can make some adjustments. We're not perfect. Right. Nothing about this is perfect. Adjustments can be made. You know what I mean? Like, I want everyone, I don't care what community you come from, I want everyone to know that there should be, my man Kenneth said it on the previous season, everyone should feel comfortable in a cop's presence. They should not feel fearful. Yep. They should feel comfortable. And that's real. I should not go somewhere and people immediately get uneasy with my presence. That's a problem.
That is a problem.
And that's not coincidence. That doesn't happen to a fireman. No one's uncomfortable when a fireman comes on scene. Why? Because they're not doing anything to make people uncomfortable. There's cause and effect to everything. Right. So when cops, act oblivious, like, I don't know what's people's problems. What are you talking about? Are you blind on purpose? What do you mean you don't know what are people's problems? You don't just get uncomfortable for no reason.
We also have to really educate our families, man, especially our black families in the culture that they're in. Y'all seen before. You have a parent, with a young child, and see if you do something wrong,
he going to him.
Right. We have to change that, man. We have to change that mindset and that approach in regards to when a young child sees a police officer, because every time a kid sees police, it shouldn't be a negative encounter. Right.
I have to say this story. I have to very quickly. I think I went into the supermarket. I was on duty. I went into the supermarket and went and bought a bowl of fruit. And I had a guy come up to me. Well, this kid had to be all of 6. All right, sir, take him. I said, what are you doing? He said, up, take him. I told him, this is it. And the kid is crying his eyes out. I said, Dad, do me a favor. Don't do that. Right. And he says, why not? He needs to learn. I said, that's not how you teach. I said, and I'm not telling you how to be a parent, but that's not how you teach. Right. I said, you need to recognize what I do for a living. I says, why would you plant a certain image in your child's head at 6 years old that that's what my role is. That is not my role. I said, teach him that in the event bad things get done by him, there will be consequences for his actions. Right. But do not present me in a manner of, if I'm the one who's gonna do something bad to him. I said, because that's what you just did. I says, that's not my responsibility. I says, young man, you're not coming with me. I said, that's not what I'm for. I says, if you need me for something, that's what I'm for. Otherwise, there's no reason for you and I to have interaction. I said, if you need me, that's what I'm for. I'm not for anything else. So no, you're not coming with me. I says, and Dad, don't ever do that again, because you got to understand what you're presenting when you do that. I says, the next time that young boy see a cop, do you know how he'll probably respond? I says, don't make him fearful of cops at such a young age. Make him fearful of consequences, not of the person. I'm not here for him to be scared of me. Make him understand there's cause and effects to his actions and there's consequences for things that we do. Don't make him fearful of the person.
You know what we're dealing with here is with this particular story in itself, because if you look at it, you having that conversation with the dad also presents the mindset of that dad as well, right? With how he perceives cops. He's only projecting onto his son or his child what he feels you guys represent as well.
For sure.
That was a projection of him. And so what I see with that is, from a bird's eye view, this is what's going on. We have, especially in the black and brown community, we have a long history of encounters and engagements. More public because of technology, and previously because of the fact that that person's dead or no longer exists or is gone or locked up. And so naturally, we have to understand that we train our minds, right? We train our brains to perceive things, and that world that we perceive as our reality. So if for generations and generations and generations, a police officer was perceived in a manner, especially to black and brown people, that lays dormant in the generations to come.
Right.
Because me personally, I believe in the conscious mind. I believe in a subconscious mind. And then I believe in a deeper subconscious mind, to where your past generations of things that have occurred lay dormant and exist through genetic DNA. You know what I mean? Like, there's even scientific proof that show, even through meditation and certain things, you could rewire your DNA. And that's, for some people, they call them generational curses or whatever you want to call it. But those traumas literally are woved into our way of thinking.
For sure.
And so, what you guys are back, because that's how I grew up. I grew up hating the police. When I see the police, I'm going this way. I've been harassed by police. First time I was arrested, I was 13. My engagements with police officers have never been great until I became an adult, right? And I chose to view people a little bit differently, including recognizing that cop, honestly, is just another man now. In most cases, people around me, I'm looking at these cops like the issue is the abuse of power in these situations that are creating this cycle to continue. So here I am as an adult being taught and having the understanding that police officers aren't here for our help or for our benefit. You only show up when I'm in trouble. You only show up when somebody needs to be reprimanded, not to be of help, not to be of use, not to be looked at as great, but to be deemed at as a negative figure.
That's what's being presented.
But that is what's being presented because that's what we went through.
Correct. That's my experience.
Exactly. And so now we have a lot more people of color in law enforcement. And obviously that transition from when it started wasn't necessarily the smoothest transition, because here now we have people of color now obviously getting the opportunity to be in law enforcement when before that wasn't even a thing. And then now having to prove themselves, to the people that they're around, and also to the white cop. And so now here we are. Once upon a time, I would have beat this guy down because of his skin color or take him in or belittle him now he's also an officer. And so we have this weird dynamic that I feel even within the system right now, I bet you there is residue. And so here we are. You guys are dealing with your own issues, even when it comes to stuff like that, systematic issues that are now also, we are dealing with those systematic issues and traumas and things that we're dealing with. And here we got two broken people or two broken groups trying to manage. And in that, in any two groups of brokenness, you're just going to get chaos. And so I feel like
mess.
Now things are becoming a little bit more exposed. Things are becoming a little bit more understood. Podcasts like this are existing now. Conversations like this are being had. And it doesn't mean that this is going to change immediate, right? Because the reality is, even now, like, I'm cool with cops. I mean, I don't look at you like a police officer. Right? I don't look at you as a police officer. Plus, I just met you today, so I'm just one of the homies. You know what I'm saying? So, but I have, when I deal with police officers now as an adult, it's like, all right, it's cool. It's just a regular. And he's doing his job.
That's what it should be.
But I would be lying if I didn't tell you that something in me always, that I have to control and like tell it like, yo, chill out. It's cool. There's no problem here. Everything's cool. Even if I didn't do anything, I'm just like, oh, like that thing will show up, like, oh, lower the music, or you know what I mean? Like, oh, don't look that way. Slow down a little bit. Like, just all kind of, it's just, that is the norm. That's normal. I've had to adjust my normality to something that was foreign, because what is normal is what we've discussed. And so, yeah, man, that's just how I feel about that.
Let me ask you this then, and get your perspective on this and your opinion. Law enforcement has been existing forever and a day. It's been around for a long time now. It's not going anywhere, right? But you need the police. Without police, in my opinion, it would be anarchy. But
I agree.
But for black and brown communities, years ago, back in before the 60s, before Brown versus Board education, we had problems with education, right, black and brown communities, right? Before, a long time ago, a black and brown person got into a legal situation, we had, they had public defenders and they wasn't represented the best way. Right. So, they have always gotten a raw deal when it came to education. We've always gotten a raw deal when it came to
housing,
life. We've always had housing, legal assistance, legal aid, and education, and doctors not having the affordable, the opportunity, having affordable health care to get the procedures that we need to get done, and subsequently we end up passing away from it. So, but even fast forward today, we're not going to stop sending our kids to school.
Absolutely not.
We're not going to find ourselves in a legal situation seeking an attorney for legal advice. We're not going to stop going to the doctor to get our annual checkups. So there's no hesitation in doing that, but there's hesitation when it comes to, calling the police or asking the police for assistance, or having this perspective on police, and having this, like you said, this feeling inside of you that, police are just out to get me. But we have other professions that have shown through history and facts that they've given us a raw deal as well. Right.
I mean, and so you look at a lawyer. So my first encounter before most likely I get to that lawyer is you. Right. Is the police officer. I'm in handcuffs. That's why I need an attorney. Right. Of some sort. Now, obviously there's other reasons why you need attorneys, but probably in most cases it's like you're the person that initiated it. You're the person that dealt with it. And I'm not saying I didn't do anything bad. I'm just saying you're probably the first line of defense or the first line of encounter that's being that they're dealing with. Right. So, and what was your question exactly? Because I feel like what you're saying is why with the doctors, obviously there's history of doctors killing off people of color. That's facts. Obviously, you have attorneys or people who are, in that particular space that didn't represent people of color correct. I mean, you got the housing, the redlining, you know what I mean? That occurred, all kind of from school, from the Board of Education, etc. Right. But when it comes to this, those things have been handled a lot more. I don't remember the last time I seen in the news somebody saying that a doctor done killed somebody of color. I don't know the last time in the news I seen somebody saying, now I'm not saying this doesn't happen. I'm not saying I probably can't move into that neighborhood or buy that house because that realtor or somebody in that particular place is racist or prejudice.
Right.
But it's a lot more uncommon. You know what's more common now? Police officers killing. That's what it is.
And it's unwarranted.
And I'm not saying that the killings aren't justified. I know everything has details and specifics, but the reality is what's being presented and what's being seen outside of certain details is that thing. So it's kind of hard to move on and to continue in a progressive state and a positive mind when this happened last year, this happened this year, this happened a month ago. It's like, all right, so when is that going to end? Because then when that ends, maybe I might like y'all. Maybe there's a place that can facilitate some type of trust between us two, because I don't see it. And if I don't see it, just like anybody else, look, bro, you stay over there, I'm gonna stay over here. You get out my face, I'm gonna be out your way, because I don't want to deal with you. Because last time I dealt with you, my daddy, I ain't seen him since.
And if that's
last time I dealt with you, my brother, he's been locked up for 10 years.
Right.
And it's not saying that the reasons why they were killed or they were locked up weren't because that's the law. It's just the experience of that encounter has now been positioned within my heart and in my mind to be the thing that now I'm standing on when I'm working or being addressed by you.
And bottom line is, if that's the way the community is going to approach it, then how can we ever bridge that gap to make sure that the community and the police are able to come as one? And obviously now, I'm not saying we go, everyone is going to hug and kiss in the community, but everyone will now have a level of comfort to just understand anytime I interact with a police officer, this is how things should normally go.
Conversations like this.
Period.
And then also not conversations like this, because knowledge is one thing. Understanding is completely different.
Absolutely.
In all things, get what? Understanding. Right? And if that is the truth, I don't care I can know why police officers are X, Y, and Z, but it is also your jobs to have those conversations with people.
Yes.
You need to, everyday people, the people in your world. We're not,
Speaking in regards to other cops
and other people who view the cops in particular ways, right?
100%.
It wasn't until I've gotten older in life that now people around me became police officers that I knew of personally, but that I knew personally before they were police officers, that opened my eyes like, dang, y'all really just regular people for real.
Shit is just,
you know what I'm saying? And I know him off the job.
But that's because you're meeting normal, regular people who have a certain presentation about themselves for why they can make you feel that way.
But
because you'll meet cops,
right?
Obviously, who are out here who obviously feel like they're not regular, normal people.
Exactly. That's the point, and that's what I'm saying. Like being a person. And in not just being a person, because lead by example, of course, but having actual dialogue, right? Because if you're bombarded with a perspective consistently, then eventually you're going to believe that thing, unless you have something to combat it with or you've removed yourself. And so if all I am being is bombarded with F the police, F12, that's eventually going to just become culture now, which it kind of is, but but for many reasons, and by any means, like I'm not here to justify anything from any side. I'm here just to speak my mind. I'm here to reciprocate, but there's a lot of things that I don't agree on, but I'm also solution based. And for me, I do want to see a better community and a better union and a better camaraderie between people and the police. There should be, because the reality is that this thing is going to continue. Yeah. It is going to continue.
It's going to be a cycle.
And now guess what? People are fed up. And if a dangerous person is a fed up person who's misinformed. If I'm misinformed and I'm fed up, oh yeah, that's why cops are going to die. That's why more cops are going to get shot. Because the misinformation is the lack of communicating between the understanding, the conversations we're having now. Plus, I'm fed up. And not only am I fed up for myself, I'm fed up for my grandma. I'm fed up for my grandfather. I'm fed up for my grandfather's grandfather. Now I'm taking all of that on me.
You lash out.
Now it's just,
yeah, I'm done.
Right. It's a wrap. I'm fed up. And so now we're getting these responses, which I understand. Now, how do we fix that? And to fix that is going to require you guys to get uncomfortable.
100%.
You guys to get uncomfortable with doing things that, guess what? In an everyday cop life probably wouldn't be a thing because you're just doing your job. Well, I feel you. I hear you. But the history, the foundation in which you're working on got some problems.
Right. No.
And you guys have to be a part of uprooting that. Otherwise, you're going to deal with all the thorns that's on it.
Yeah. For sure. Is there anything you would like to address prior to us wrapping this one up? Because I want to make sure that you feel like you got your message across the way you wanted to get it across. So is there anything you would like to address prior to us wrapping this up?
Yeah, man, I just think that in law enforcement in general, I think we need to do a better job at highlighting the good that we do, especially in the community. You know, for me, for example, I'm assigned to the Office of Community Affairs. So my everyday function is to go out there in the community and engage the community and rebuild that trust. And to
I think you're a good one for it.
Restore that faith. And with that purpose that I have, I want to continue to, share that my experience. In my opinion, like one of life's great lessons is through experience.
Absolutely.
So I want those experiences to be more good than bad. Like I've been doing the job for 10 years. Like I mentioned, I have worked in areas in this city that have been, very high in crime, high in poverty, Black and brown communities, and to this day, and I say it proudly, I have yet to use my taser. I have yet to use my firearm. I have yet to even get into a physical altercation with anybody. So
show love.
And I pride myself on that. And because it's all about treating people with respect, and be able to understand that, in this profession we meet a lot of good people just on bad days.
100%.
We meet a lot of good people just having a bad day, and knowing that, and being in my line of work and being a field trainer prior to my promotion, and that was really fulfilling for me, being able to take a young officer fresh out the academy and to try to instill in him the practices and the procedures to help him or her go out and do the job successfully and the right way, because integrity is doing the right thing when no one's watching. That's what integrity is.
Right.
So just trying to instill those qualities and beliefs that I have within myself, and impart them on, everybody that comes across my path. That's what, I'm focused on.
Well, I promise you, I'm on that journey with you. I always tell you, you ever need anything from me, I'm there. I'm gonna make shit happen, and I know that's vice versa. I 100% appreciate you coming, man. This was definitely a pleasure. I want to make sure that we share moments like this more often, because, like Frankie said, we need to present us police as being just regular, normal people who want to get things addressed. So I appreciate you. Again, as always, before we close out, follow us on all platforms. Make sure you subscribe, you like, you comment. We need the comments. We want to engage with you guys, so please, we need the comments. Stay tuned in with us. Stay tapped in with us. I always say it, we're not going nowhere. Truth.
Peace.